Welcome back to Wednesday night. Last week, I apologize. I know there wasn't any warning. Everything's okay. Nothing big happened. There's just something that came up in the personal life. I had to take care of it. But everything's good. Everything's smooth. And we are back at it on this beautiful, beautiful Wednesday night, November 15th. It's been a crazy season. It's been a crazy season so far. Lots of interesting things have happened. Sedated Fork is back. That's right. Lots of crazy things have happened this year. We're going to be discussing some of those things. First, tonight on the show, we have a very special guest. He's been on before, and in fact, he's on, in a way, every night. Tyler Soto, Heavy T himself, is going to be joining me. He is the guy producing the show, making the magic happen. And every time he comes on, he does a fantastic job. So we're going to have him on tonight. We're going to be talking about this rookie class, the things that we like, the things that we don't like, the surprises, the disappointments, and where we kind of see these guys moving forward. So will be a very interesting conversation with him there. And then, of course, Dennis Bennett's going to be joining me as well. When he comes on, we're going to be looking at the newest Nerds ADP. That's right. Average draft position. And look, I know you're like, I'm not drafting right now. Why do I need ADP? Well, it's still helpful to know in rough terms, what are these guys valued? How are we valuing these players at this point? So we'll be looking at that and then maybe talking a couple surprises from the 2023 season as well. So excited to have him on. Lots of good things going on. And then, of course, we are getting dangerously, and I mean dangerously close to the trade deadline. There might already be some leagues where it has already happened for some of you guys. I know a lot of leagues push it to week 11, 12, 13, 14. Some don't even have one. Let's get those trade questions in. I'll answer those in between our two guests tonight. So without further ado, let's bring in Mr. Tyler Soto himself. Heavy T, how's it going, my man? Oh, 1 second. Un momento.
This is why you make sure to change your audio when you're supposed to. And but this is what it's like being a behind the scenes guy as opposed to normal upfront guy like you are.
Yeah. You've got a few more things you're juggling, a few more things you're keeping an eye on compared to me. I just get to talk. I just get to talk and look pretty. That's all I got to worry about.
That's true. The look pretty part especially. Yes, completely.
It's tough, but somebody's got to do it. All right, Tyler. Well, let's talk about these rookies. Josh is back. How's it going, Josh? Good to see you tonight, buddy. Let's get into this rookie class, and let's start at the quarterback position. The first quarterback off the board at the time, it was fairly consensus NFL-wise. Bryce Young, first quarterback off the board. Obviously, for fantasy, it was typically Anthony Richardson was the first quarterback off the board, but NFL draft-wise, Bryce Young was the first quarterback off the board. I think it's fairly safe to say underwhelming so far. What have been your thoughts on Bryce Young moving forward? I know he doesn't have the best supporting cast, tough situation there, but what are your thoughts on him?
I mean, that's kind of what it is. I don't think it's fair to give Bryce Young a letter grade just yet. I kind of have to give him an NA because besides Adam Thielen, there's nothing else on that team that's really going on. I mean, Hayden Hurst is okay. I've never been a big fan of Miles Sanders at all. And he has, if not the worst, the second worst offensive line in the entire league. Yeah. That dude cannot have any time to get anyone open. I would imagine it's going to get better because, I mean, they have to protect him. They have to do something to help him out. But, I mean, for right now, I think, like I said, I think NA is probably like the best grade he can give him just because it's not his fault. That team is just awful.
I think that's a fair assessment, but I will say the concerns that I had with him in college, they like you like to see guys improve upon those things. And granted, you're right in saying that the supporting cast is terrible. One of the worst supporting casts overall offensively in the NFL. So it is a tough evaluation. But one of the big knocks, at least at Dynasty Nerds, that we had on Bryce Young when kind of looking at his tape was he's an accurate quarterback. He gets it out. Seems to be a pretty smart guy. But for the most part, we're only seeing short and things over the middle. He has a hard time completing passes to the outside and deep, which those are what we call like the NFL throws. When we talk about guys that can make NFL throws, those are the things that we're talking about on the boundaries and deep. Those are the types of throws that you need to make. He can make the in rhythm stuff. Most quarterbacks should be able to, if you're going to be a starting quarterback in the NFL, should be able to make those in rhythm throws. So while it has not been a true fair evaluation, the NFL it's a tough place where, we've seen quarterbacks that are drafted in the first round get replaced right away. Now, I don't think that's going to happen. He was taken first overall. They're going to give him obviously more time, but I've been underwhelmed. He hasn't done anything. He hasn't had any of those moments where I was like, whoa, that was a special play. Everything's just kind of been, yeah, it's fine. And so for me, I've walked away, even though maybe things will get better once they improve this team. This doesn't look like one that's going to turn around quick, though. It's going to take some time. And at that point, how long can he just be okay with this type of team before they scrap it? New head coach, new GM, new everything. And then who knows what happens.
Yeah, I think for this team, you're probably looking at like a solid 3-year rebuild, possibly a 4. I mean, because there were even those rumors in the middle of the season that Frank Reich was supposedly giving off the vibe that Bryce Young was not the guy he wanted. So now you have that going on top of it. And it's a mess, man. It really is. I think their only saving grace is that the rest of the NFC South happens to be terrible. So they're kind of in pace with the rest of the division. But yeah, it's going to be a long, difficult rebuild. If I'm a Panthers fan, I'm not expecting anything for at least the next 3-4 years.
Yeah, for sure. So draft-wise and fantasy football-wise, at least at Dynasty Nerds, we typically saw Bryce as the second guy off the board in most super flex drafts. We were pounding the table for CJ Stroud as the second guy off the board for fantasy football, and obviously he was the second guy in the NFL draft. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say we're witnessing one of the best rookie quarterback seasons that we've ever seen. Like, he's played incredible, and it's with a team that is supposed to be a very bad team. Even as somebody that watched every snap of his, because I'm an Ohio State fan, so I saw every snap of his. I didn't even come close to expecting this. I thought he was going to be good. I thought he was a high floor player, but I did not think his ceiling was this. I have been absolutely blown away with what he's been able to do in year one.
Yeah, I have to completely agree with that because, I mean, there's people throwing his name in the MVP conversation.
Yeah.
And the last time an MVP was a rookie was Jim Brown back in, I think, the 50s, like late 50s. We're seeing something that frankly, we've just never really seen before.
Yeah.
And I have to give him a ton of credit. So when I lived in Houston, the Texans won their very last game that moved them from first overall pick to second overall pick. And fans were absolutely ripping Lovie Smith for it. But I understand, like, you can't go out and tell your guys, like, hey, we have to lose. Like, you can't tell those dudes that. So I understood why. But, man, those fans owe Lovie Smith an apology because they hit the absolute jackpot with CJ Stroud. And I will be the first person to admit I was very, very wrong. I never trust Ohio State quarterbacks. I think the last one that had a decent week, like not career, just week before CJ Stroud was probably like Bobby Hoying.
That's not true. Justin Fields had 2 4-touchdown games this season.
2 4-touchdown, tomato. The Bears.
He was the number 1 overall quarterback for fantasy on the week, and the number 3 overall fantasy quarterback on the week.
And he's probably going to get replaced. So what does that tell you, right?
He might. He really might. It'll be because of Carolina's pick, not because of their pick. But he might. But tell me this: will he be a starting quarterback somewhere next year? Yes or no?
I'd like to think so because there's another team that's just going to give him a chance.
Yeah.
I'll say this: he's better than because you mentioned earlier about rookie quarterbacks coming in and then getting replaced almost immediately.
Mm-hmm.
And the last person I can think of with that is Josh Rosen. He's not that bad, like
No.
he's not Rosen bad, but he'll probably get a chance somewhere.
Who would
Hopefully,
you rather have NFL wise, not fantasy wise? Because I think it's easy fantasy wise.
Yeah.
Who would you rather have NFL wise? Justin Fields or Kenny Pickett?
Is there a third option?
Nope. No escape.
Oh man. In that case, maybe Justin. I think I like the run ability a little bit more. Not a massive fan of Pickett. God bless Mike Tomlin for being able to get that team to where they are. I don't know how
that team is hilarious. That team is so bad on offense, and yet they have a fantastic record. Like no idea how they're doing it. Their defense figures out a way always. Their offense scores at the last possible moment. Like it is hilarious that they are even in the conversation of the playoffs, let alone like as a playoff team right now. So hilarious. All right, let's get to the third quarterback that was off the board this year, the number one quarterback in fantasy football purposes, and that was Anthony Richardson. Anthony Richardson, I think this is probably another one that is a very incomplete evaluation. When on the field, he looked awesome. The problem was he had a really hard time staying on the field. He left the game 3 separate times before the last one put him out for the season. It's really frustrating because he looked really good, really, really good in his opportunities. But it's tough to say, was that just the league getting used to him? Was it just schemed really well? Like, what was it? But the future looks bright if he can stay healthy.
Yeah, like that's the problem though, is that if he can stay healthy. I mean, he's maybe running a little too much.
Yeah.
And I think he has to learn, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember him diving a lot. I think he has to learn how to slide, which is maybe the number one thing as a quarterback. Yeah, if he can stay healthy, because when he was on the field, he actually looked pretty decent.
He did.
Like, and it looked just like someone like, okay, maybe the Colts have a dude. Now they're very lucky they have Gardner Minshew behind him. But other than that, I think an incomplete evaluation is also fair because we only saw 5-6 weeks, I think.
He left after week 5, I think it was.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is one you absolutely have to give an NA. It's just, I mean, we're only 5 games into his career. We don't know.
Right. Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. So there's not a ton more to touch on other than if you are in a dynasty league and you are in rebuild mode, perfect opportunity to trade the starting quarterback that you have right now that is scoring points for a guy like Anthony Richardson who is not scoring any points. So that is a move that I'm absolutely looking to make right now. You might have to, depending on the quarterback you're giving back, you might have to give a little bit or take a little bit. But I love getting guys that are injured on those rebuild teams because they can't score points for you. You can't accidentally get W's and hurt your draft pick. So love getting those guys and shipping out guys that are hurting my draft position and giving me the second or third pick instead of the number 1 overall pick. Let's move to the last quarterback that I want to really focus on, and then we'll kind of do a grab bag at the end there. But Will Levis didn't get a lot of opportunities early, got an opportunity to start, looked fantastic in his first game, 4 touchdown passes, been a little bit more mild the past few weeks, hasn't balled out quite to the level that he did early on. What's your thoughts on Will Levis?
Yeah, I don't know if Will Levis just saw Arthur Smith on the schedule and was like, well, we got to stick it to this dude because he left. So I don't know if that's why the one game he goes off is against Atlanta because of course, why not? That figures. The one game he had was great. I think he just trusted his should be number 1 receiver in DeAndre Hopkins because DeAndre also went off that day. I think that was the 3 touchdown day.
Yep, 3
Other
touchdowns,
than that,
4 for Levis.
Yeah, other than that, the offense isn't all that great. They have DeAndre, they have Derrick Henry, Tyjae Spears is starting to come out a little bit more. But other than that, it's a lot of like meh, like just kind of whatever. So far, I almost hate saying this. If you gave me a choice between Will Levis and Kenny Pickett, I'm probably taking Will Levis.
Yeah, I think I am too. He definitely can make all the throws. It's going to be a consistency thing with him, I think. We'll see how consistent he can be overall, but I do like the glimpses of what could be with him. And that's kind of going back to Bryce Young. Like, that's what I haven't seen out of Bryce Young is I haven't seen those glimpses of like, ooh, okay. Like that's something to look forward. Like I haven't seen any of that with Bryce Young yet. Where in his first game, I saw several of those with Will Levis. Will he put it all together? I don't know. But at least I've seen something that gives me some semblance of confidence. Now, we've had literally a historic amount of rookie quarterbacks start this year. Of all of the other guys that have gotten starts, are there any that you're like, that guy's a little bit interesting? Maybe you're not saying he's a long-term starter right away or anything like that, but at least your interest has been piqued a little bit.
There's only two guys that really come to mind. Tyson Bagnet is one, and that interest is I don't want to see him anymore. He's not good. I mean, don't get me wrong. Great story coming from
Sure.
Shepherd University. But when I watch the games that he's in, they talk more about his dad being this arm wrestling champion than him. And he's not good.
No, and
he's
they keep trying to make him the next Brock Purdy. Like they want him to be the next Brock Purdy so bad. And he's just not. Like, fine third quarterback on a team, but not much more than that.
Considering the team he's on, he's not even the next Mitch Trubisky. Like, let's just tone all of that down. He's fine. He's a backup. He's fine. He's not the worst backup. He's not the best backup. He's like a mid-tier backup. That's what he's going to be.
Fair.
The other one, Aiden O'Connell, is a little interesting just because that first game he came out that was under Josh McDaniels, it was a bit rough. But now McDaniels is gone and Pierce is in as head coach, and all these guys are buying into him because now they're 2-0. I'm a little interested. This guy actually gets like a full off season's worth of NFL coaching under his belt. They might have something. I mean, I know they signed Jimmy G to that big old deal, but
it's not a tough one to get out of, fortunately.
Yeah, it's not. And then maybe you could trade him for like just a couple late round picks and then spend a year with O'Connell to see what you have. And then after that, just go from there.
Yeah, because next year's a rebuild no matter what for this team. So
yeah, they're not going anywhere. I mean, he might as well start from ground zero and just see what you got.
And I'm sure you're a big Tommy DeVito fan, right?
Oh, God. Dude is literally the human like the real life version of The Sopranos. It's exactly what he is.
Oh, man. Did you see like the cut that they did to like his dad over there? And I was like, his dad looks like a legit gangster.
Yeah, yeah. And the funny thing is, too, is that so DeVito went to Syracuse. And at my other job, I work with a guy who went to Syracuse while DeVito was the quarterback. And he's just saying, I don't know how this dude got drafted. He sucks. Like, I don't know how he made his way to the NFL, but he's awful. So I don't know how he's starting for the Giants, but it's not like the Giants don't have anything else either.
It's hilarious. It's hilarious. All right, let's move to the running back position. One of the most hyped rookie running backs we've had in a long time, and he went to your Atlanta Falcons. Tell me what you think so far about Bijan Robinson.
I almost this one's kind of weird because I almost also have to give this one an NA because he's not being used the right way.
Right.
We've seen him have these flashes, but before this week, or before this most recent week, week 10, he had one touch within 5 yards of the end zone for the season. And then you had that weird game where he maybe had migraines. Was he in trouble with Arthur Smith? Where he just
weird.
he got one touch and played 8 snaps. Just, I don't know what is going on with that offensive play calling. And now all of a sudden, Arthur Smith seems to love Tyler Algier way more than Bijan. I don't know what is happening.
Best goal line back in football.
I don't want to hear that. As a Falcons fan, I don't want to hear that. It's just, I think Bijan can be this special dude but what the hell is that offensive play calling? Like it's almost like a Bryce Young situation where like we just haven't seen everything yet because they're not giving us anything.
Yeah, it is definitely an odd one. That is absolutely for sure. Uh, and I think an NA is fair because what we have seen when he's been given the opportunities looks fantastic. I mean, he
Yeah.
looks every part the bit of a top 5 running back in the NFL.
His ability to cut is just insane. Like the couple highlights you've seen it, this dude's leaving defenders on the ground. So why is he only getting the ball what seems like 25-30% of the time? I don't know.
Well, and especially with most running backs, not all, but most running backs, it's a rhythm thing. You know, you got to get in some sort of a rhythm. That's why you often see later in the games these guys really start to take off because they get in a rhythm for the game and start to get to feel for how the holes are opening up, who's collapsing, who's overplaying, who's, you know, like you get a feel for all of those things. And even as like just a guy that only played running back in high school, like I can testify to that. Like you get a feel for what the defense is doing. And especially a guy that's a bigger back like Bijan, you want to leave your impression. Yes, he's going to make some guys miss, but he also has the ability to be able to bowl some guys over at times too, if needed. So it is definitely frustrating that he isn't getting the workload that he should be, but I have every confidence. I mean, fantasy wise, now granted, there's been some guys that have been injured and there's, you know, bye weeks and things like that. The Falcons have not had their bye week yet, but on the season, overall total points, Bijan Robinson's still running back 9 on the season. So that shows you, even in games where he's got, you know, 0.3 points and 5.9 points, he's been so good in some of his other games. That's helped keep things afloat there.
Yeah, it's because honestly, he's a really good pass catcher. I mean, that helps a lot. And like I said, this if he's running back 9 and the Falcons just decide, okay, we're gonna let this dude be the pure number 1 back, he's gonna unleash.
Yeah.
Oh, this dude's running back 3 at a minimum easily.
Yeah, he's up there with Christian McCaffrey. Like that's the
Oh,
type of
100%.
range that he could reach.
Yeah.
So we'll see. Another rookie running back. First 6 weeks of the season, you were pretty frustrated. In PPR leagues, 8 points, 12 points, 9 points, 9 points, and then 2 games missed due to injury. However, in his last 3 games played, Jahmyr Gibbs, 27.6, 29.9, and 26.2 fantasy points per game. So he's averaging 28 something points a game over the past 3 games for him. Absurd numbers for Jahmyr Gibbs. What's your thoughts on Gibbs? And you know, he's getting used a lot more than he was before. We did get Montgomery back this week, but they used both. They just were like, all right, we'll just use both a lot then. What are your thoughts when watching Gibbs?
I love Jahmyr Gibbs so much. It makes me feel really good too, knowing that when I drafted him in just about all my leagues.
Nice.
And in each league, I took him in either the 4th or the 5th. And then on top of that, the one league I didn't get him in, I traded for him right before the season started. And I feel somewhat bad, but it is what it is. I told my buddy, give me Jahmyr Gibbs, I'll give you J.K. Dobbins straight up. He said, okay. 1 quarter later, J.K. Dobbins out for the season. And I got a very angry text message saying I never want to trade with you again.
Oh
which
my
is
gosh.
It is what it is. It'd be like that sometimes. But Jahmyr Gibbs is just he's so good. And we saw flashes of it with that first game against Kansas City.
Yeah.
And we're wondering, like, why are they just not unleashing him? Kind of similar to a Bijan
Sure.
thing. But now they have. And he's really, really good. This guy is easily going to be probably a mid first round pick next year for those guys who like, you know, really high running backs.
Yeah.
I think he could be up there because I really like Breece Hall too, but he's like Breece Hall status right now. I think that's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, I mean, you can make a dynasty wise, it's really, really interesting. You have Bijan Robinson, who's for most people the clear-cut number 1 dynasty back, not fantasy back, but dynasty back, just because of the age. Then you have this huge group, I shouldn't say huge, but a pretty good sized group of running backs where Some are younger but haven't shown as much just because they haven't had time to. Some are older but have produced. Some are right in their prime. So you have guys like Christian McCaffrey. You have Jahmyr Gibbs. You have Breece Hall. You have Jonathan Taylor. And you have a guy that we're about to talk about right now in Devon Achane, who literally has been a world beater when on the field. He's really only played in 3 games. He got like a touch or two in week 2, but in weeks 3, 4, and 5, 51.3 points, 27 and 21.5, just absurd numbers, ripping off chunk plays, huge long touchdown runs. And I remember talking about it when he was drafted to Miami. I said, there is not a player and a scheme that is a better hand and glove fit than Devon Achane and the Miami Dolphins. So perfect fit for Achane there. So what are your thoughts? Because it looks like we're getting him back finally this week after a long injury absence.
I think if you put him with any other team besides Miami, I don't know if he does as well.
Sure.
The fact that that team is built around nothing but pure speed absolutely helps him, and he flourishes. That dude is ridiculously fast.
Stupid fast.
Like, he
legitimate track speed, like set records at Texas A&M for track.
Like this dude could be on the Olympic track team speed. Like he's that fast. I really like him. The question is, can he stay healthy? Because usually with guys like that, they're maybe a little bit on the smaller, maybe a little bit more fragile side.
Sure.
But if he could stay healthy, this dude has the world at his fingertips, fantasy-wise.
He's averaging 12 yards a carry.
Disgusting. Absolutely gross. Like 12 yards a carry should be illegal and criminal in the NFL. Like, that should not be allowed.
I think the single season record is like 6.5. Like for a guy that has over, 150 carries or something like that. It's like 6.5 or something like that. He's doubling the record right now.
Yeah, it's like he's set to literally blow it out of the water.
Yes.
I don't
see how things work when he comes back. Yeah. Obviously, we don't expect him to continue at 12 yards a clip, but could he continue at 8? Maybe.
Dude, if he's at 8 or 9, that's still ridiculously insane because you're talking every 2 plays you give this guy the ball, he's getting you a first down.
Right.
That's what we're talking. Like, and that is just even in a league where all the rules are tailored to the offense and offense is everything, that's still unheard of.
Still nuts.
It's just, insane.
Still absolutely nuts. So we had another rookie running back that was actually drafted above Devon Achane because Achane, I believe, was the 4th or 5th running back in this year's class. He's been in a bit of a timeshare, not on the good end of it, and that's Zach Charbonnett. What are your thoughts on Charbonnett with the Seattle Seahawks?
Charbonnett is just biding his time because Kenneth Walker is just one injury away from Charbonnett exploding. I like Charbonnett. I like what I've seen so far. It's just going to take that one. And let me make this clear. I'm not wishing injury on Kenneth Walker at all.
You heard it here first. Tyler is hoping for an injury to Kenneth Walker.
Definitely not hoping for any of that. But I like what I've seen so far. He has, I think if he keeps it up, he can definitely be a 1-2 punch, very similar to what Tony Pollard was to Zeke Elliott in Dallas. I think that's a pretty fair comparison right there. But he just got to keep working towards it. Probably won't happen this year, but I'd say by this time next year, you're getting a 1-2 punch in Seattle.
Okay. All right. I think he's flashed. We've definitely seen some flashes of some nice runs and some nice plays. Oh, we got your puppy in the background there. I didn't know you had a dog.
Yeah, I do have a dog.
There you go.
Forgot she was back there.
She's like, "Hey guys, I'm here." But yeah, he's another one. Hasn't gotten as much work as you would have hoped if you drafted him, but you kind of knew that with what they had in Kenneth Walker already. Let's get to one of my favorite players in this class, Tyjae Spears, another guy taken in the 3rd round, just picks away. I can't remember if he was first or Achane was first, but they were picks apart from each other. And he hasn't had any massive games yet, but he's had a lot of those 6 to 10 point games, had the 16, almost 17-point game when he had the touchdown in week 5 there. But he's also kind of the, similar to Charbonnett, but just more consistent work than Charbonnet's gotten. We've seen him a lot on passing downs, gets 4 or 5 carries a game, and he's done quite a bit with it when he's been given the opportunity. So if you're listening to this, I'm a big Tyjae Spears fan. He's averaging 5.3 yards a carry, and he's doing well in the receiving game. So you're not surprised that I am, but I'm curious your thoughts on what you've seen out of Spears so far and what you think about him moving forward.
Also someone I really like, and as far as him getting a steady share, it does make sense because I believe Henry's on the final year of his contract.
That's
so
correct.
You want to see what do we have going into next year. And the Titans aren't going into playoffs or anything.
No.
So you might as well give him as many shares as you can. So I like what I see so far. I think if we're talking redraft wise, next year, you might be able to get him in like the 6th or the 7th. And I think that's an absolute steal.
Yeah, it's all going to depend on if Henry's back or not, because I think it makes sense to not bring him back as a rebuilding team. Let's not pay money to a guy like Henry, but he's also the face of the franchise. How do you say no if he wants to come back and he wants to retire a Titan? So it'll be interesting to see. And I think it'll also depend on, is there a championship team that's looking to add him to their squad? Because at the end of the day, it's going to go one of two ways. Either you want to retire with the team that drafted you, or you want to win a ship. And that's not going to happen in Tennessee before his career's up. So does he go to a Buffalo Bills? Does he go to a Kansas City Chiefs? Does he go to a team that actually has a shot to win a title?
Yeah, I think that's what ends up happening. Unless they offer him a ridiculous amount of money, I don't see him going back to Tennessee at all. My worst case scenario is that this dude decides he wants to go to Atlanta. I would
reunite with Arthur Smith.
I would cry. I would literally cry tears of just sadness because
could you imagine the 3-headed backfield between Algier, Bijan, and Derrick Henry?
Which, as a Falcons fan, I don't want, and as a Dynasty player, I don't want either.
Definitely don't want.
Awful. No, but I think Buffalo's a really good fit. Gonna throw out a dark horse here.
Okay.
If Cincy lets Joe Mixon walk, that's an interesting little fit right there, considering that the AFC North is super, super physical.
Yeah.
And because of that physicality, I could also see Pittsburgh throwing a deal his way.
Now they would have a three-headed backfield with Najee and Warren and Derrick Henry.
Yeah, I think that would work too, because I'm not all that big on Najee anyway. Okay. I don't think he's a number 1 back. I think he's a solid number 2. Yeah. And then just have Henry just plow. It would basically be a slimmer, less body fat version of Jerome Bettis, I guess.
There you go. Yep, that makes sense. Outside of those 5, we haven't had too many. We might have had some good individual weeks, but nothing consistent out of the rest of the rookie running backs. Anybody else that you want to specifically, look at or mention in this class?
Not really. Just I hope Tank Bigsby gets some more touches. Mm-hmm. So I really liked him. Yeah. But I mean, to be perfectly honest, I thought Travis Etienne would be hurt by now. I'm actually surprised he's still standing. But I mean, more power to him.
I really thought that they were going to utilize more of a committee backfield than they have.
Yeah, that too.
ETN's been getting a stupid amount of touches. So it's that was one of the biggest surprises to me this year, that they did not implement more of a timeshare there in Jacksonville. All right, let's move over to the wide receivers. We could start at the first drafted one, but let's start off the one that was probably the biggest surprise and took the NFL by storm the first 5-6 weeks of the season. He's cooled off a decent amount since then, but Puka Nacua, he is still currently wide receiver 10 on the season. 21 points, 30 points, 12 points, 31 points, 20 points. He was a monster to start the season. And like I said, he's cooled off since then. 3 of his 4 games have been under 8 points. But Puka Nacua, Were you one of the ones that saw it coming? Because I sure wasn't.
Definitely did not. One of the guys I work with at my other job did go to BYU, and he's like, "This guy's legit." So I was like, "Okay, well,
we'll see."
Props to you. I didn't draft him, so okay, I guess we'll see.
So was Zach Wilson, but we see what we got there.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But I mean, with Puka, that's another interesting situation because Cooper Kupp is more towards the end of his career, and he's starting to get hurt a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another thing where he's one injury away from just exploding and being all over the scene again. So I don't remember off the top of my head what Cooper Kupp's contract is like, but I've loved what I've seen from Puka so far. And the only reason he's cooled down is because Cooper Kupp is there. If Cooper Kupp isn't there, he's going off he is Cooper Kupp. That's what he is.
Yeah. So the thing that's held me back a little bit on jumping all in with Puka, and I mentioned it, while he was going off, and I mean, in some senses it looked silly because he was crushing it while I was still a little skeptical. But this feels like one of those situations where kind of like what we mentioned, how you were not so confident that Devon Achane would be doing this on a different team. And I think we have the same type of thing here with Puka Nacua. I remember when Justin Jefferson first got Kevin O'Connell as his head coach. And Kevin O'Connell was the former OC of the Rams under Sean McVay. And Justin Jefferson's like, now I see why Cooper Kupp was open all the time. Like the scheme just wide open for guys. We saw guys like Bobby Trees, who by all accounts was a flop in Buffalo, all of a sudden flourishing in LA, just flourishing. So what I think this has more to do with, if I had to guess, is this has more to do with Sean McVay being a brilliant offensive mind and Matthew Stafford not being washed like we thought he might be. He's actually had a decent season as far as getting guys to football. So I'd be really curious what would happen if Matthew Stafford calls it quits. Sean McVay hops in the booth, like has been rumored for the past few years. What would happen to Puka Nacua? Would he still be a guy that's a wide receiver one or flirting with wide receiver one? Or would he be more a low-end wide receiver 2, high-end wide receiver 3 type of guy? That's what we won't know for sure until that happens, but that's my suspicion.
That's a pretty fair suspicion. I mean, because we've always wondered what would Cooper Kupp be like if Sean McVay wasn't there. I don't know if he'd be the same player that he is. So I think that's fair because a lot of it is McVay. The dude's arguably the best offensive play caller in the entire league. Like, dudes are wide open.
Yep.
So, I mean, we'll see, man.
We'll see. First player at the position drafted this year was Jaxon Smith-Njigba. It's been a little bit of an up and down season. The interesting thing with Jaxon Smith-Njigba is most of us analysts, including myself, said, hey, this year, we're probably not going to see a crazy amount from Jaxon Smith-Njigba because they do have Tyler Lockett that's still there and producing. DK Metcalf's the number one guy. So it might be a little bit of a slow year. And overall, it has been. Now, much better the past few weeks, 16, 12, 12, 9. So a little bit better the past few weeks. But it's funny because everyone said that. And then when he started off slow, we're all like, oh, man, he might be a bust. Maybe he's not as good as we thought. So the exact thing that we all predicted would probably happen did happen, but yet everybody's still out. So he's been a little bit of an interesting one. What is your thoughts on Jaxon Smith-Njigba?
He'll be just fine. Part of it you did explain is because Tyler Lockett is still there. I know Tyler Lockett is not only towards the end of his contract, but towards the end of his career.
Right.
So he probably has maybe, if he decides to come back, 1-2 years tops. And I don't know if he stays in Seattle. But on top of that, you're right. He did start slow. And then Geno Smith had that pep talk with him on the sideline, basically saying like, hey, it's on me, blah, 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 blah. And he's picked it up since then. I think he's shown flashes here and there, but it's a little bit of a three-headed monster over there in Seattle with the wide receivers. So he's just kind of bide his time, but he'll be fine. I like him. I would, if you're in fantasy, I don't think I'd trade him just yet. I would keep him.
Absolutely. Next guy drafted, I'm trying to remember for sure. I think now I'm blanking because there were 3 guys all in a row. I believe the next was Quentin Johnston for the Chargers.
I'm trying to remember if it was him or Zay Flowers. I'm pretty sure Addison was the last one.
I think you're correct.
Yeah.
Let's just say it was Quentin Johnston. So Quentin Johnston, a guy that I came on here, was not a fan of. I had him very low in my nerd score. Even though he was a first-round pick, we do the nerd score before the draft, so that way we don't let draft capital or landing spot influence our decisions on their skill set. He came in as, I believe, the 8th ranked wide receiver in the class for me, so significantly lower than consensus. So far, and it's early. It's really early. But so far, my concerns are exactly what has happened to Quentin Johnston. And he was another one where, like, we don't know if he's going to produce because there's guys ahead of him. Well, then all that's happened since then is all those guys keep getting hurt. And then they just keep putting somebody else ahead of him and somebody else ahead of him. And finally, he's starting to get a little bit of work. But he still hasn't really shown a whole lot in any game. He's still not getting great separation. His ball skills are lacking. To me, the writing is on the wall. Like, does he maybe end up having an okay career? Sure. But I just don't know that he has the ball skills needed to be a true wide receiver one in the NFL. But I could be wrong. What are your thoughts on him?
In the NFL, he's probably going to end up being just a guy. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's
No.
okay. Fantasy wise, I wouldn't touch him, especially in redraft leagues. I probably wouldn't touch him. Dynasty, see what you can get for him. I don't even know what you could get for him at this point. I mean, I guess you could try and hype up your fellow league mates and just try and swindle somebody.
Maybe you could give him and a second to try to get a first.
That's not a terrible idea. That's not bad. I
Something
mean,
like
out of the 4 wide receivers drafted in the first round, he's easily the worst of the 4.
correct.
And it kind of concerns me because it makes me wonder if the Chargers, all they did was just watch that TCU Michigan playoff game. And they're like, this is our guy based off this one game. Which
He looks like Mike Williams. Let's do it.
Yeah, apparently that sometimes does happen where guys are like, this is our guy. Yeah.
Well,
I don't really have,
honestly, and maybe I'm being overly critical here, but I think the hubris of some scouts and coaches and player development guys are, he's big, he's fast, I can work with the rest. I'll make the rest work. I can't teach height, I can't teach speed, but I can do the rest. When we look at a lot of the best wide receivers, specifically the Chargers on their own team is one of the best examples. Keenan Allen ran a 4.7. A 4.7. Like, not a great athlete, but one of the better wide receivers in the NFL. So that's the thing I think that happens sometimes is they see the measurables and they say, I'll make it work. And it's really tough to do that.
Yeah, I mean, you see the measure, don't get me wrong, big is great, fast is great. But you can be really fast and have horrible footwork.
Yes.
And if your footwork isn't there, you're going to be just a guy. I won't even talk about the hands because that's a whole separate issue. Sure. I think he's okay at catching the ball. I'm not ready to put him at like Darius Hayward Bay status where the dude couldn't catch anything. But like I said, he's just kind of there. Like I think trading him and a second to try and get a first, I think is a fair trade.
Yeah, Dynasty. Absolutely. Well, let's move on to Zay Flowers then. Zay Flowers has had a really, really interesting season. He has made some really nice plays, but a lot of it has been really close to the line of scrimmage, not getting as far downfield as you'd want. Currently quarterback or wide receiver 30 on the season. So solid for a rookie to be, a top 3 wide receiver in his rookie campaign. But the big thing that's missing from his resume right now is just touchdowns. He only has a single touchdown on the season. So some of that's a little bit bad luck. But what are you going to do? I actually have really liked what I've seen out of Zay Flowers. Do I think he's ever going to be that true number 1? Probably not. But I don't even know that they drafted him thinking that he was going to be a true number 1. I think he's a really good slot player that can get open and can make things happen in the open field. And that's going to lead to consistently high end wide receiver 3, low end wide receiver 2 numbers for fantasy football, and I'm good with that. But I don't know that he's ever going to be like that guy. What do you think about Zay Flowers?
I mean, considering the team he was drafted on, I don't know if they've ever really had a real number one receiver. I guess Marquise Brown maybe, but
Yeah.
I mean, it's him and OBJ. He's kind of the default number one just because OBJ is the other guy and
Sure.
he's like 30 something. And yeah, he can't be the number one anymore. So, and then the other part of it is because you said he only has one touchdown. Well, that's because Lamar Jackson's his quarterback and Lamar Jackson likes to run.
Sure.
So that's part of it. I mean, Lamar Jackson has, I want to say 5 or 6 rushing touchdowns this year. Even if you take half of those and give them to Zay Flowers is probably maybe wide receiver 20.
Yeah.
So that's part of it. I like him better. So I took a lot of rookie wide receivers with my picks this year in fantasy, and I liked him more than I like Quentin Johnston.
Tell you that for sure.
Yeah, I was about on him and JSN. I was about the same. But I mean, I like what I've seen so far. He's been really good sitting on the bench, and then when I need to plug and play him because someone has a bye, he usually does like just enough.
Yeah.
To get me by
10 points, 12 points.
Yeah, I think fantasy wise, he's pretty solid. I think Dynasty, I'd probably hold him for maybe another year just to see what he does. And then after that, you can kind of do what you want with him.
Yeah.
But I mean, he's good. I think he ends up having a pretty solid career.
I agree. I like the kid. I think he's a talented player. And I think he's a decent fit for what they're doing over there in Baltimore. Yeah. Let's finish up the wide receivers. And then I think I might have you just come back if you're okay with that after the break, and we'll finish up tight ends. You cool with that?
Yeah, that's cool.
And I'm going to do a quick wardrobe change because, man, it is hot. I did not realize how hot it was in my office, and I'm burning up. It's a quick wardrobe change, taking off the hoodie. Let's go to Jordan Addison. Jordan Addison, outside of Puka Nacua, has been the best rookie wide receiver this year. And there were some questions about what's going to happen when Justin Jefferson's no longer there. And he proved to everyone that he is absolutely still that guy, able to make plays even without Justin Jefferson, kind of tilting the coverage his way. So a lot of double-digit games. He had that weird week where he didn't score at all. But other than that, double digits every week. Had the high point of that 31-point game. But Jordan Addison, I'll let you talk about him first. What are your thoughts on him, and then I'll talk about my thoughts.
He is one of the reasons, like one of the 2 reasons that the Vikings somehow have a winning record. They should be in number 1 pick contention, but they're actually a pretty solid team. And I know part of it is Kevin O'Connell, and part of it is Josh Dobbs just having this out of nowhere amazing season. But he's just really, really good. I also think that he's just, I don't know how else to explain it. He's just been perfect the entire season, aside from the one game. Yeah. But it kind of goes back to what you said about Justin Jefferson and talking about Kevin O'Connell. This is why Cooper Kupp's always open. This is why Jordan Addison is wide open, and he makes great catches too.
He does.
So I think out of everyone in this draft class, probably has the biggest ceiling. I don't think JSN is that far behind him, because I think JSN will eventually pick it up. But I like Jordan Addison. If I had to pick a top 3, it's probably Addison, JSN, and then Puka right after.
Okay. Yeah, and I think that's a very fair evaluation, and he's been nothing short of phenomenal. You know, I had him as the wide receiver 3 in the class, and he's done nothing to disappoint me there. And if anything, I should have had him higher. He's played fantastic, despite, you know, whether Jefferson's there, whether Jefferson's not there, hasn't mattered. He's been fantastic. So good on him to be able to still produce regardless of the situation. All right. Any other, there's definitely a lot of other wide receivers. We covered 5 of them. Are there any other receivers you want to touch on? There's definitely other guys that are making some things happen here and there. Any that you want to highlight?
I think these 5, are pretty good. Okay. I think we could leave it at that.
All right. Just a couple quick names that have produced, at least in spurts. We've seen guys like Rashee Rice, guys like Michael Wilson, show a little bit here and there. I think those are two of the bigger ones. Jonathan Mingo's disappointed a little bit so far, but so has that entire Carolina Panthers team. So kind of par for the course on that one. But let's go ahead. We'll go to break. When we come back, we'll touch on what has been a very good tight end class so far. I'll get to some of your trade questions. I've seen them there. I have not ignored them. We'll definitely get to those, and then we'll get talking with Dennis Bennett.
The Bears have to be one of the most inept franchises of any sport I've ever seen in my entire life. And they share the city with the White Sox, who are also inept. Like, that is how bad the Bears are. I just don't understand how you can go your entire existence and the quarterback that wins you a Super Bowl is Jim McMahon. You couldn't find anybody else.
They don't have a good history with quarterbacks, and they let him be the quarterback for a long time, too.
Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes right there. Mm-hmm. And you drafted Mitch Trubisky. They were right there. I there's a lot of pain in being a Falcons fan. The Bears are one of the teams I could argue they might have it worse, and they have a Super Bowl. And when the best quarterback in the past 50 years is Jay Cutler, you have a problem.
That's so funny that you just said that. We were talking about Jay Cutler the other day, me and my friend, and I was like, yeah, he was on, because we were watching the Colorado Rockies game against the Giants, and it looked like he was behind the thing. I was, yeah, well, he played for Denver most of his career. We looked it up. Chicago let him be their starting quarterback way too long.
Here's the thing, too, is that Jay Cutler wasn't bad. Like, he was erratic. He wasn't terrible, though.
The poor man's Brett Favre.
I'm taking him over Justin Fields. I'm sorry.
I would.
But Jay Cutler led that team to an NFC title game that they lost to Green Bay. But he's gotten farther than anybody else. You want to know who the other starting quarterback was for the Bears in the other Super Bowl appearance they made? It was Rex Grossman. What are we doing out here? It was Rex Grossman, and Kyle Orton was the backup. How are you that bad? Bro, oh my God. Listen to the top 5. According to Football Reference, the top 5 greatest Bears quarterbacks of all time. Jay Cutler, number 1.
I can't believe it.
Sid Luckman, who last played in 1950, is number 2. Jim Harbaugh is number 3. Jim McMahon, the Super Bowl winner, is number 4, and he played there for 6 years. And Mitch Trubisky, is number 5 on the list as terms of passing yards go.
Always a good one. Always a good one. We're back with Tyler Soto and myself, Garret Price. Let's get these last couple of players in this rookie class, and that's going to start with the tight ends here. And there have been some really good ones this year. Normally, rookie tight ends don't produce well. This year has been an exception. Currently, the tight end 4 on the season, Sam LaPorta for the Detroit Lions, which is hilarious because the Detroit Lions had TJ Hawkinson, did not use him, traded him to Minnesota, and then drafted a guy that they're going to give the ball more to as a rookie than TJ Hawkinson ever got. And TJ Hawkins just balling in Minnesota. Such a weird situation. All that to be said, they definitely saved themselves a lot of money by not paying him, and he's playing very well for Detroit. So what's been your thoughts on Sam LaPorta?
I love Sam LaPorta so much. Real quick, shout out to Andrew Cooper for being the tight end guru that he is. Our friend here at Better Sports Network. Just absolutely. He's the one that called it. He's the one that convinced me to draft Sam LaPorta. And I think in the 8 leagues I'm in, I think I took him in 6.
Nice.
And he was the very last pick I made in all 6 leagues, to the point where I had text saying, how did you draft this dude? Like, how did you know about who he was? And I was like, I just know.
I'm a genius, bro. I'm a
Genius, man.
genius.
Don't tempt me in this genius, man. No,
Oh,
he's just so good. He fits perfectly with that system. Why they couldn't do that to Hawkinson, I'll never know. But it just
so weird. Yep.
yeah, it just works out. He's just so good. He's almost always open. He's a big guy. It's perfect, man.
Good after the catch, which you don't always
Great
get out
after
of
the
tight end.
Yeah, great after the catch. Really good at breaking tackles. I mean, if you drafted him in Dynasty, you have to be salivating right now.
100%, 100%. And likewise, yeah, it started a little slower because Dawson Knox was there, but in the last 4 weeks, out of Dalton Kincaid, the number one drafted tight end in this class, you've gotten 15.5, 17.5, 16.1, and 16.1 in the last 4 games out of Dalton Kincaid. He's looked every bit the number one tight end, a guy that could become what we've seen out of Andrews and Kelsey and Hawkinson. Like, he could enter that tier with his receiving ability. I've been really, really impressed with him, and it seems like Josh Allen has really started to build a good connection with him.
Yeah, it's funny because if you look at Dalton Kincaid and you know nothing about him, and someone just told you this guy plays football, which team does he play for? You're like, yeah, that guy plays with the Bills. He just has a Bills.
He looks like a Bill.
Yeah, it looks like a Bill. It looks like he'd fit well in the snow. Like, yeah, no, he's another guy that's just perfect for that system. I mean, you have Josh Allen, and don't get me wrong, I know everybody's ripping Josh Allen for how he's been playing, but he has Stephon Diggs, Dalton Kincaid, and then there's a very big drop off.
Sure.
After those two, as far as his wide receiver tight end personnel goes. I mean, Dawson Knox is good. I think Kincaid is better.
Yeah, absolutely.
Stephon Diggs is great. Gabe Davis, not the guy everybody thought he was going to be.
No.
So, I mean, as long as he doesn't get hurt, he's a big dude. Josh Allen, he likes to run, just dink and dunk, get it out to him.
Yeah, absolutely. So, 2 really good tight ends having really good rookie seasons. You don't get that very often out of the position. So, bravo to those guys. Let's get to the last one that I want to touch on. He's not put up the same numbers as those guys, but you've seen glimpses, and that's Mr. Luke Musgrave from the Green Bay Packers. If you're looking to start him, he's not quite at that level yet. And best ball, sure, he's helped you a little bit here and there, having a 14-point week and a 10-point week and that kind of stuff. But he's not somebody that is in a consistent offense, consistent situation. And I think he's still growing and learning too. But he looks like what could be another very serviceable, solid tight end in the NFL for a long time.
Yeah, he's perfect as a safety blanket for someone who's still very much learning the game in Jordan Love. And be perfectly honest, I don't know if Love is going to be there that much longer anyway. But I think like you said, obviously not as good as the first two, LaPorta and Kincaid.
Right.
But he's a solid rookie year for him. He's caught a few balls here and there. He's getting on the field, like he's seeing time. It's not like Kincaid where he had Knox in front of him.
Right.
He didn't have anybody in front of him because Tunyon's been gone for a little bit. And I don't even know who their tight end was last year. I honestly don't remember. So, yeah, I think Luke Musgrave, he's going to be
Robert Tunyon for what it's worth.
Yeah. I'm trying to think what's a really good comparison for him right now. Well, I don't want to say Kyle Pitts because that just makes me sad. I think maybe like a middle of the road, maybe kind of like what Hawkinson was in Detroit. It's probably a fair comparison for where he is right now.
Sure.
So, I mean, he has some upside. So he's one of those guys where you'll just see what happens. Like, again, if you have him in Dynasty, maybe hold on to him for another year, see what you got, and then just decide what you're going to do after.
Awesome. Well, Tyler, I appreciate you coming on. Appreciate you joining me. I think this was a really good conversation, kind of breaking down this rookie class. Any last minute thoughts before you get out of here?
Not that I can think of, other than Falcons need to fire Arthur Smith, and that's it. That's all I got with that.
That's all we got. All right. Thank you so much, Tyler. Appreciate you joining us. Let's go ahead. Instead of going to break, I know we normally go to break around this time, but we just had one, and I only have so much time to get to all of these questions. So let's try to run through these. I might not spend quite as much time on each question as I normally do, but I do want to try to get to all of these as quickly as possible. So we're going to scroll back to the beginning of the show. Sedated Fork, 12-team super flex best ball in a rebuild. Been trying to move Tyreek Hill for a while. Teams don't want to give me much because they think he only has 2 years left. Best offer is a late first. Just hold. It is really difficult when you're in a situation where it's a good player and people aren't valuing him due to his age as highly as they should. I think this is one of those situations where, and I'm going to talk about it on a Talking Dynasty show. We were going to hopefully get one out this week. I don't know that's going to happen, but probably early next week. What I like to do in these situations is I like to have an auction. And what I'll do is I'll say, hey, I am moving Tyreek Hill today, no matter what. The best offer right now I have is from this guy. I won't necessarily say what the offer is. And I'll say, this guy is the best offer. And I'll start a scoreboard and say, send me any offer and I'll put you on the scoreboard. So then somebody inevitably is going to send you like a low second. You're like, all right, I got a new offer. Not a very good one. It's in second place. This guy's in second place. And then I kind of move people up and down the board because what will happen is they'll see, oh, I'm in second place. I actually have the second best offer. Maybe if I just give a little bit more, I'll move into first. And guys will start to compete against each other to try to get their hands on that guy. So that's something that I would maybe look at doing to try to drum up some more interest in a guy like Tyreek Hill because he's been literally the wide receiver one. You want to win a ship, this guy will help you win a ship. And that's kind of the pitch that I would throw to the league. All right, Office Depot says, what up? Just benched Trevor Lawrence in Superflex by acquiring Sam Howell in exchange for a 24 second, a 24 fourth, and AOC, which I'm assuming is Aiden O'Connell. I think that's a good acquisition. Am I 100% confident Sam Howell is going to be their long-term quarterback? I'm not, but it's not necessarily because of Sam. It's because I don't know what's happening with that organization as a whole, but I think he's shown enough to say he might be able to hold on to that job. So I think that's a good move. Anytime I can get a starting level quarterback for a second and a guy that I don't believe is going to be a long-term guy, I think that's a great move. So no problem with that at all. All right. Cody B saying Stroud was the easy 1-1. I can't believe they passed on these guys that get paid millions to evaluate players. I know, man. I know. All right. Ian says PPR League start 2. Debo, Montgomery, Mostert, and Achane. It's a tough one this week. So this is a PPR league. I am absolutely starting Devon Achane. I know that Mostert's there, but I'm absolutely starting Devon Achane. I think that they're going to give him the ball. It's not a great run defense in Vegas. So I'm absolutely starting Devon Achane. And the second one is closer. So Mostert's out for me. I'm starting Achane. It's close between Montgomery and Debo for me. I could see it going either way. I'm probably going to go with Montgomery over Debo, but it's really close, like coin flip on those two guys. So Achane for sure, and then probably Montgomery over Debo, but very, very close between those guys. All right, let's see. Office Debo said, still wonder if Kendry Miller is a guy. Hope he gets an opportunity. Took him in a super flex at 203 over Achane. That one hurts. That one hurts for sure. Dylan says, redraft offer, trade Andrews, Mixon, and James Cook for Kelsey and Bijan. My 12-team full PPR, Stroud, Pollard, Mixon, Cook, Herbert, Hunt, Spears, Diggs, Ayuk, Hollywood, Downs, Reed, Andrews, and McBride at tight end. I would do it. Kelsey, the little bit of bump you get from Andrews into Kelsey, I think is worth it. Right now, Mixon, Bijan, Bijan's clearly the better player at this point in his career. It's just the usage. Although Arthur Smith seemed to wise up and cave into the peer pressure a little bit this week, did give a little bit more work to Bijan Robinson. So I think I would do that. I would absolutely go with the Kelsey Bijan side. Heavy T said Kelsey is also running that Taylor Swift high 2 TD game incoming. Gotta love it. Got to love it. All right, let's see. How crazy, this is Office Depot saying, how crazy am I to believe that Michael Carter might be a valuable handcuff in Arizona with Kyler returning and Connor's injury history? Not crazy at all. I was in a small, it's a dynasty league, but it's a smaller benches, and nobody had Michael Carter, and I just picked him up. And I think he's a really good fit for that offense, for an offense that's looking for speed. Now, he could just as easily get cut in the offseason and they draft somebody, and it wouldn't surprise me in the least. But I do think that he's a really good fit for what they do. And I think he could be a nice little safety valve for Kyler. So I don't think you're crazy at all. McBride saying, Ice, what is it? Ice tray shoves? I think. Saying McBride over LaPorta or Kittle this week. Crazy that we've gotten to that point for sure. I don't think starting McBride would be crazy at all, and I do have him over George Kittle this week. However, I do have Sam LaPorta first. I think we're going to get a shootout between Chicago and Detroit this week. I think we're going to get a lot of points scored in that game. But I have no problem starting Trey McBride because we could get a decent amount of points out of that game as well. But I would go LaPorta, then McBride, then Kittle. But all very, very close this week. So Cody B says, just sent out an offer in a 2-quarterback 10 team. I have Pat, Dak, and Love. I offered Love in a 25-second for Puka and Deshaun Watson. Thoughts? You offered. Wow. That's a great trade. Yeah. So he hasn't necessarily accepted. It's just an offer that you sent out. Yeah, I love that trade because I don't believe in Love long term. Deshaun Watson, obviously, it's not been as good as we would have hoped, but we saw the glimpse, and then obviously now he's out for the season. So that is one thing that you do hurt a little bit this year if you're in any sort of contention window at all. You don't have a third quarterback in a 2 QB league, so that does hurt a little bit. But I mean, you can make an argument for Puka alone, let alone Deshaun Watson. Like you could make an argument for either one of those pieces being worth that deal, let alone both of those pieces. So I think that's a great deal, Cody. I would definitely take that deal. So any other questions? Any other start sits, trades, anything? We've got about 3 minutes until we got to go to break and get Dennis Bennett in here. So it's your last chance to go ahead and get a question in there. Otherwise, I'll just talk, which that's why you're here. You're here to listen to us talk. So, I can just talk. But if you have a question, I definitely prefer to get your questions answered. One thing, and I know Heavy T's not going to love this, but in his first game back, we saw his last 2 games that he started and finished. Justin Fields, 4 touchdown passes in each one of those games. Was starting to get in a rhythm. He gets the Detroit Lions this week. I think that is a fantastic matchup. According to Fantasy Pros, second best matchup out of any quarterback this week. So I think it's a great opportunity there third best for Justin Fields this week. I think it's a great matchup. I think there's going to be a lot of points scored. And I think he's eager to kind of prove that he deserves to be the quarterback of the Chicago Bears. And I can't blame him. So absolutely Justin Fields this week. Office Depot saying, you're great. Thank you. Appreciate it. Cody B, we need more podcasts. I know, man. We're close to getting us to full time. Once I can go full time, there'll be lots of podcasts to be had. Ice asks us, Cardinals players are such interesting pieces with Kyler looking good. Thoughts on Hollywood in Dynasty, assuming Marvin Harrison Jr. gets drafted? At this point, it's a big assumption that Marvin Harrison Jr. ends up being an Arizona Cardinal. We'll see how it all plays out. But if so, obviously, that's huge for Kyler Murray. But Hollywood, I think, is perfect in a wide receiver 2 role. He's proven he can be a wide receiver 1 in an offense and make it work. And he was one of my favorite offseason buys. So I have a decent amount of Hollywood Brown on my fantasy teams. But I wouldn't be scared away from Marvin Harrison Jr. being drafted. I think this is an offense that if Kyler gets back to the Kyler that we know and love, which this week he looked like that guy, I think that there's plenty of yards to be had in the passing game for multiple weapons. So I would not be scared on acquiring Hollywood at all. All right, let's take our final break of the night. When we come back, we will have Mr. Culture Coach at Dennis Bennett at Culture Coach on Twitter joining us here on the Better Sports Network.
From the Hometown Hero series, Zach Parise.
That is a very nice card, and that's one I'll probably have to organize a little trade ski with you, because I would actually like that card.
You got downtown Newark in the background. I mean, Newark has never looked so good.
No, it is not.
We'll put that back up on the screen. I just want to have a penny sleeve ready, and yes, we can absolutely work out a little trade ski for that, because that belongs in a Devil fans collection right there.
I'll trade you the Braden Schneider rookie card for it.
Done.
There we go. The first card for card trade on Rip and Rip history. And it was that easy. It
was that easy. That's because, you know why? Because neither one of us are jerks. And it's the same thing when we try and do fantasy trades. Like, we don't try and screw each other. We have conversations. If there's a fit, there's a fit. If it's not, it's not. We don't try and, take the other one over the barrel. So there you go. In a penny sleeve. Hometown hero, Zach Parise. He was among the league's most productive goal scorers in 06-07 and followed up with a terrific regular season with an even more impressive postseason. And then they talk about what he did in the first round series against Tampa Bay that year. So that's off to the side for you.
That's true. And, if this is it for his career, he had a hell of a career.
He did.
Hopefully he comes back one more year with the Islanders, but if he doesn't, hell of a run.
All right, we are back. This good-looking gentleman to my right, maybe it's to my left, depending on how it looks on your screen. But either way, Dennis Bennett here joining us on the Better Sports Network. Dennis, how you doing, buddy?
The guy that's not you.
The guy that's not me. Everyone knows that's true. The better-looking member of this duo here on the second half of the Better Sports Network. Dynasty Nerds.
I'll make it good. There we go. How's that?
Hey, you're looking great, Dennis. Looking great. Look good, feel good, play good.
That's right. I feel good, man. I feel good. I'm got some teams competing. I got some rebuilds going. I had a team last week, a start 10 Superflex Dynasty, that I had to start Desmond Ridder and Jimmy Garoppolo at quarterback. Mind you, I just didn't have a quarterback. And I'm playing for the 101. So I'm like,
okay,
that's it. Anthony Richardson's on IR. Jameis Winston. I got 4. Andy Dalton. I just put 2 in that were playing. I won by 30 goddamn points.
No, you didn't.
I was like, how can I win by 30 with nothing at quarterback in a super flex league when I'm literally in last place?
You're not wanting to win.
I'm in second to last place. And as I'm looking, I'm thinking, well, I've got Richardson. I also have the pick of the person that's in 10th place. So I'm thinking, well, 2 or 3, I can get either Williams or May and Harrison Jr. But the guy who's now in first place there's no incentive for him to take a quarterback because he has CJ Stroud and some other stud. I forget who it is now, but quarterback isn't a need for him.
Okay.
And I think he can justify saying, well, I'm going to take Harrison.
Well, makes sense. Makes sense. But yes, you have those leagues sometimes. I actually, believe it or not, in the championship game one time, I was playing against someone that literally did not have a quarterback to start, and I lost the championship game to a team with no quarterbacks in a super flex league. Just how it goes.
Crazy. It's crazy that the way that goes.
So I'm sending this over to Tyler right now because I just thought about it. We're going to be talking about Dynasty Nerds ADP and guys that we think might improve upon their ADP, guys that might drop in their ADP, ones that are a little bit of a surprise to us. Just the overall thoughts on the ADP, because even if you're not drafting right now, and Dennis, correct me if you think I'm wrong here, but even if you're not drafting right now, it's really good to know roughly what the ADP is, because that tells us how the community values these players. And so when we go to make trades, we know how far off we're not in making these types of deals.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I'm looking. So Trevor Lawrence has been an abject disappointment this year. He's a QB 18 on the year.
But you know what? Let's put up the ADP while we're talking about him, because he was one of my biggest surprises. So you said Trevor Lawrence, one of the biggest surprises this year.
So draft season, he was what, QB 8?
Yeah.
I think he was right there at the end of that
6, 7, 8, something like that.
That elite tier. And I'm just like, he QB 18 on the year, and I'm starting to think I can't decide. Is he just Derek Carr? Or should we be like buying like it's a red light, blue light special? Sorry, wrong district. Should we be buying like it's a blue light special and we're getting in on the early bird and Lawrence, we're going to be able to buy a QB1 at QB2 prices for the rest of this year?
Well, according to this, Dennis, we can't. And this was arguably the biggest surprise to me in the whole ADP. I guess we're starting off right away. Now we're not building up to it. The biggest surprise to me, Trevor Lawrence still the 7th player off the board. And I'll be honest, looking at the quarterbacks behind him, Anthony Richardson, Lamar Jackson, CJ Stroud, Tua, I would rather have all 5 of those guys ahead of Trevor Lawrence, or all 4 of those guys. Sorry. All 4 of those guys ahead of Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah. I'm still struggling with, do I believe he was, as a prospect, he had such a good profile. And even this year, despite, it not seeming to go well, he's got the 6th highest adjusted completion rate. He's got the highest first read rate. And I don't know, I'm not sure if that's good. And these are quarterbacks with 175 dropbacks.
Mm-hmm.
So he's throwing to his first read 75.8% of the time. And that obviously hurts Calvin Ridley because he works further down the field than Christian Kirk. He has the 9th lowest off-target throw rate. So he's an accurate thrower, and he's getting the ball out early. Is he throwing to his first read so much because he's feeling pressure? I mean, ETN has been having a great year, so the running game is there to support the passing game in a big way. I'm just a little bit stumped about, do we move him down? He's a 10 to 18 kind of quarterback as opposed to a 5 to 8 kind of quarterback.
Well, here's the thing for me. His first year was atrocious, and we kind of just unanimously gave him a pass because of all of the Urban Meyer stuff. And then last year, he did finish as quarterback 8 total, but on a points per game basis, he was 1, 2, 3, 4 4 spots lower than that. So he's really quarterback 12 on the year, points per game wise, of guys that started 8 or more games. So, I mean, he's barely a quarterback 1 on a points per game basis. And like you mentioned, he's quarterback 18 this year. And I wonder if we've gotten to the point, and obviously as a community we haven't, because he's still rated that highly. But I wonder if we've gotten to a point where maybe he's just not going to be able to live up to the hype. Maybe he's just not that elite of a quarterback. And remember, part of this is not just the passing of the football, but a lot of these guys are solid runners as well. If they're not solid runners, they're elite throwers of the football. And so far, he's shown to be a good thrower of a football and decent athleticism, but he's still not getting a ridiculous amount of rushing yards and rushing touchdowns and things like that. So I think it's one of those things where I think we just overrated him. I just don't know that he's a Justin Herbert, a Joe Burrow. Like, I just don't think he's one of those guys.
So are you selling now? Like,
this is a full-on sell for me. If you can give me CJ Stroud plus, you can give me Tua plus for Trevor Lawrence, absolutely. And like I said in the draft, I'm taking him straight up. So
right.
I think you can get the plus based on this, but I would take him straight up over Trevor Lawrence at this point.
Yeah, I mean, there's still believers, and that's where, like, I don't think I'm going to take. I'm not going to pay Stroud plus, but I'm a big Stroud believer. I get it. I wear scarlet and gray glasses when that's what I see everything through. But Stroud he's looked like an elevator, and it was widely believed coming into the season that Stroud was in a bad situation, was going to struggle, and he has lifted all the players around him except Dameon Pierce. And I mean, Schultz has been great. Noah Brown, Tank Dell, Nico Collins. Robert Woods has been serviceable. I mean, and he's 78 years old or something now.
Yeah.
So they went into the season missing 4 of 5 offensive linemen. And it was just a situation where Stroud is, I mean, this could be his best year, but it doesn't feel like it.
Yeah. And that's the thing for me is in the 10 games that we've gotten out of CJ Stroud, we've already had several instances where he's been better. Like, we've not seen anything out of Trevor Lawrence in his 3 years like what we've seen out of CJ Stroud in 1 year. So the fact that Trevor Lawrence is still above him to me is baffling, like absolutely baffling, because he's doing this with guys that Nico Collins as his wide receiver 1, which I like Nico Collins. This is nothing against Nico,
right?
But he's not Calvin Ridley, a number 1 overall or a first round draft pick. He's not, a big time tight end that they signed in Evan Ingram. Like, all of these guys that are supposed to be good anyway. Christian Kirk was a big free agent acquisition. These were guys that we were talking preseason we wanted nothing to do with as a community. All of the Texans guys were like last round picks in best ball, and maybe something happens with Tank or Nico, but nobody that we're wanting to like really invest in. And he has just made them all incredible. And I'm sure some of it is they've elevated in their own right too. But that's the thing to me. Like, we have not seen anything out of Trevor Lawrence in his 3 years that looks better than what we've seen out of CJ Stroud in 10 games. And so for that, I have to put CJ Stroud out of it.
Right. If I were doing rankings, I definitely would have Lawrence lower.
Yeah. All right. So let's stick to the top 24 guys here. Obviously, at least for me, Trevor Lawrence was the biggest surprise as to where he was ranked. For you, are there any other ones that just, wow, he was ranked there? Like, that's where he's being drafted. Like, who stands out there for you?
So Kyler, slightly out at 27. I've never been a huge fan.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, he had a great game coming back this week, threw for 250. But Kyler has always been I don't think he's an elevator either. I think he's a quarterback that, scrambles a little too much and ends up getting injured. He's never thrown for more than 4,000 yards in a season. And he played 16 games his first two, but his last 3 seasons, the last 3, he's not going to play a full slate of games. So I'm a little bit lower on Kyler. From a wide receiver perspective, I love Jalen Waddle's talent, but it feels like he's a little overpriced at 19.
Honestly, him and Chris Olave have both had fairly disappointing seasons from what the expectations were. I think both guys were expected to kind of ascend into that wide receiver 1 territory this year, and neither one has really done it on production.
Yeah, it's been a challenge. I want, early in the season, it looked like him and Hill were both going to be uber productive. And then the running game started clicking, and Tyreek was still doing all of his stuff. And Waddle has kind of become the forgotten guy. He still gets, he'll put up 78 yards and a touchdown, and 5 or 6 catches. Good games, but not the explosive games like we see out of Tyreek. So I think he's probably a little bit overpriced. Yeah. What are your thoughts on Justin Fields at QB 11?
So I'm probably not the best person to ask because I am a card-carrying member of the Justin Fields fan club. So I do have my own bias there. But the 2 games right before his injury, and I've brought it up on the show already tonight, 4 touchdown passes in both games. Wide receiver or quarterback 1 and quarterback 3 on the week. So things were just starting to come together for them. And honestly, with their pick, I don't think they're going to be in range to get one of those top tier quarterbacks. The problem is they have the Panthers first. Right. And the Panthers first might be the 101 this year. So with that, it makes things a little bit tricky and difficult. But I'm a firm believer that if Justin Fields is not the starting quarterback of the Bears, he is the starting quarterback somewhere else that is probably just as good, if not a better situation than what he has now. Because you could argue he has one of the lesser situations as far as weapons and as far as offensive line and scheme and all of that. Like, he's in one of the lesser situations. Heavy T's going to hate it, but you put him in Atlanta, like, dude's putting up numbers with those weapons. You put him, what was that?
I said, I agreed. I said,
yeah.
Right.
You put him in Seattle with DK Metcalf and Jaxon Smith-Njigba. You put him in one of these types of situations, and I think he flourishes. So while I understand the hesitancy on him being there, he's still a young quarterback. It's not like he's played poorly when healthy because, like I said, those past few games were awesome. So I would probably still take him in this range personally, but I am higher on him than most people. So what are your thoughts?
So he was QB, I think, 4 before he got injured in the first 5 games. And arguably the first 3 of those games, they were using him in an improper fashion, to say the least. They were trying to make him a pure drop back passer, which makes me believe that if the Bears are in range with the Panthers pick, they're going to take Drake May, not Caleb Williams.
Could be.
It feels
if
like
those are still their coaches.
Yeah, but it feels like they want those are the coaches, they want that more classic kind of drop back passer at quarterback. But he was still QB4 through 5 games. When he comes back this week, I want to see, did they, I know they've had to tailor the offense to Tyson Bagent, but did they get it? Hey, maybe it's good if we tailor our offense to what our quarterback does well. We can maybe win some games and, have some production, make people happy. And they have a decent running game with Foreman and Herbert and Roshan Johnson. Komet's playing well. DJ Moore. They have weapons. So I agree. I think he's in a good spot at QB 11. I think it's hard to maybe move him up too far.
Mhm.
I don't know that I'd put him ahead of any of the guys in front of him, but I think he does have top 5 upside if he's allowed to play the way the type of game that suits him.
So here's a big surprise for me, and it's a name that I don't see up here. So looking at the running backs, we've got Bijan Robinson as the 11th, or I guess he's tied for 11. So the 12th pick off the board, last one of the first round. Then we have going down a little bit, Christian McCaffrey, Breece Hall, Jahmyr Gibbs, Jonathan Taylor. Those top 5, I have no issue with those guys in the top 5. I think you can make some argument for some of the guys below, but I don't have any big issues there. But then we have Austin Eckler at running back 6, and he's the 32nd player off the board. Then we have Travis Etienne at 37, running back 7. Josh Jacobs, Kenneth Walker, Saquon Barkley at 43, running back 10. Then at running back 11, all the way down at pick 52, Devon Achane. This seems crazy low to me, but I know that you don't like small players, and he's not team big running back, team big quarterback, team big wide receiver. He's team small guy. What are your thoughts on Devon Achane there?
So I love what I've seen from him, and it's hard to like when you just had the question a little bit ago about who do you start, and you went Achane and Montgomery. Those were easy picks for me. I think you have to start Achane until we see exactly how they're going to use him. The concern is at 20 touches a game, I don't think he holds up. And when he gets dinged up, how does that affect his explosiveness, which is his calling card? So they're going to have to limit his opportunities. And as a fantasy player, we're having to bank on, super high efficiency and explosiveness. Now he has that, but we see explosive players all the time catch a knee or an ankle and it, trips them up a little bit, and they're trying to play through it. I think that Achane's going to come out of the gate hot this week because I've heard some talk about McDaniel basically saying, look, we could have had him back sooner, but we just thought it was best to hold him out. So we put him on IR, so he couldn't come back. We got good players.
Yeah.
Also. And so my concern is, where does it become a rotation? When does Raheem Mostert get the hot hand and all of a sudden Achane gets 5 carries in a game? Or when does Jeff Wilson get the hot hand and Achane's touches get limited? Those are my biggest concerns.
So would you have him, at running back 11 down in the, the 50s as far as draft selection? So you're taking him at the end of the 4th round, something like that? Or would you have him over guys like Jacobs and Barkley and guys
I
like
think
that?
The overall pick is a little low. I feel like Barkley's getting up there in age now. What is he going to be, 26?
I think he's going to be 27.
27. And we've seen the wear and tear. He's a big guy, and we've seen the wear and tear on his body. Josh Jacobs is 25 or 26 now. He's been taking a heavy load. I would probably have him ahead of Kenneth Walker right now. It seems like Walker's in the phase-out mode. He has a certain skill set, but it seems that Zach Charbonnett is such a more well-rounded back that Pete will get Charbonnett out there and be like, oh, yeah, I forgot about this, and keep him in. And then Walker gets in, and he has to press. He's like, oh, I got to make a play, and he starts trying to bounce everything outside. And so he kind of overdoes it. I think I might have – I feel like I could move him up to 9 probably and be okay with it, but I don't know that I could put him up too much higher just because my concerns with volume and what that volume – how that volume could be affected by injury potential.
Makes sense.
And,
Let's
and
go
not,
back.
not even injury that knocks him out. It's more injuries that just slow him down.
Sure. I would have it after Jonathan Taylor at running back 5. I would probably have it Travis Etienne at 6, and then Devon Achane at 7 for me, and then Eckler, Jacobs, Walker, those guys. But that is just me. Let's look at the tight ends.
I think there's a strong case. Eckler definitely looks like he's lost a little bit. So
Yeah,
I think I could put him ahead of Eckler too.
We'll see. He's gotten which has really helped, and he's gotten a lot of touchdowns, but we'll see if that continues or not. Let's go back to the tight end position. Mark Andrews, the first one off the board, and then Sam LaPorta, the rookie for your Detroit Lions.
One pride, baby, one pride.
That's right. Second tight end off the board. Travis Kelce above TJ Hawkinson was a bit surprising for me. I think with the age, with Hawkinson being like 8 years younger or whatever it is, I would probably take TJ Hawkinson because the point differential is not that drastic. But man, you could tell me Travis Kelce plays till he's 40 and I might believe you at this point. The dude just doesn't get hurt and just keeps playing.
Yeah, it's Kelce is an odd case because his volume is so high and he's the oldest guy up in the range, and nobody's close to his age.
No.
What I think Andrews is the closest, and he's like 5 years younger.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think he's like 29.
Yeah, so it's Kelce feels like the guy that when you make the decision, hey, I'm going all in year one, Kelce's a guy you draft in that range. If not, because and even then LaPorta being at 2 feels like recency bias. And I heard you and Tyler talking, and it's really a weird situation because they took a tight end that does all the things LaPorta does and traded him away, and then drafted a tight end from the same school that does all the things they traded the guy away with.
Yep.
And it's, I don't know, something about TJ Hawkinson. He said something to Dan Campbell or Brad Holmes or, Jared Goff's girlfriend or something, wife. He said something, said he was going to suplex somebody or something. I don't know. They get that long hair and start going crazy.
Well, this is interesting because I think TJ Hawkinson should be a little bit higher. Kyle Pitts is the next one off the board at tight end 5, which I can understand the upside's there. Will that upside ever be realized? I have no idea. But the upside's there. Then we've got Dalton Kincaid significantly further down at tight end 6. To me, the path has really kind of opened up for Dalton Kincaid. I get it. Knox will come back, blah, blah, blah. They can get out from that real easily. Kincaid really looks like a guy that's going to be in that top tier for a long time. I mean, he has 3 or 4 straight games. I think it's 4 straight games of like over 15 points. He really looks like that next guy. So for him to be this low, below, much older players, guys that, I don't think Kyle Pitts has ever had a stretch like that in his career. So for Kincaid to be down here and LaPorta to be so much higher than him, I think those two guys should be a lot closer together.
Yeah, I on the looking at the change in the numbers though, Pitts has dropped 13 picks and Kincaid is up 21. So It feels like next month when the ADP comes out, I wouldn't be surprised if they flip-flop places.
Catch up a little bit.
Yeah. Kincaid is, I like what I'm seeing from him. He gets open, he catches the ball well, he runs well. I think with Knox being out, that eliminated the stubbornness of the coaches. There was no, now they have to, what are they going to do? Play Quentin Morris the same amount of snaps as Dawson Knox? No, Fair. I don't think you're going to do that.
Fair.
The offense as a whole seems to be off this year.
Well, the changes are coming. They fired Ken Dorsey, former Miami quarterback. that lost to the Ohio State Buckeyes in the national championship, by the way. He was let go, which was weird because this didn't necessarily feel like a scheme problem.
Right.
This felt like players dropping passes, the quarterback being
Throwing
inconsistent.
interceptions.
Like, that's what this felt like. This didn't feel like a scheme issue to me. So that was a bit of a surprise that they got rid of Ken Dorsey. But it is what it is. So we'll see if that, anytime that there's a change, usually there's a little extra jolt of energy. So we'll see how that all plays out. Another thing that was a little bit of a surprise to me, because I keep hearing about what he should be valued at, but we see all these rookie wide receivers, Jaxon Smith-Njigba at wide receiver 13, which feels kind of high for, him not doing a bunch, but
Yeah.
I get it. Jordan Addison at 14. We've got, I think it's just those two, but I kind of expected to see Puka Nacua up here. And he's actually even behind Zay Flowers at wide receiver 23, and he's at wide receiver 24 at the 58th pick overall. Now, I don't have any issue with that personally. Like I mentioned before, I'm a little bit lower on Puka Nacua than other people are. But what is your thought around Puka, and should he be a little bit higher?
So Puka is a product of the system that he's in. And I don't mean that as a bad thing. You hear people say, oh, well, he's a system quarterback. I mean, they're all system quarterbacks. I mean, you look for what players do well and you create a system around what they do well. If you're a good coach,
Sure.
That's what makes you successful. Puka has a skill set that fits. It just happens to do work just like Cooper Kupp's skill set. That's great. So you have a succession plan. Maybe it doesn't work well when you're trying to play both of them together, but they've also had a ton of quarterback problems this year. The team is kind of old. They're doing a real big stars and scrubs build there for the Rams. They've spent a lot of money on a few people and a little money on a lot of people. And they're trying to coach them up and scheme them up. And a lot of the times that they're able to pull it off. And football is a week-to-week game. I think the concern with Puka will be does McVay decide to hit the booth? At what point does he get burned out? We've seen coaches for years and years. It happens all the time. Coaches get burnt out because they're like dynasty owners that want to, they're always looking for a new startup.
Sure.
And all of a sudden they've got 35 teams or 40 teams and they're trying to manage them. You get burnt out. And if McVay isn't able to kind of decompress in the off season and find time in season to step back a little bit, it's going to have a real negative effect. And when he steps away, it will be challenging for the whoever comes in there next to put their own stamp. What are they going to do? And how does that affect Puka? I think you kind of take him now for what it is. Mm-hmm. He's the number 2 there. That's obvious.
Right.
As soon as Cooper Kupp came back, Tutu became irrelevant again.
Sure.
And Skowronek is not relevant. The tight end is not relevant.
Nope.
I'm interested to see when Kyron Williams comes back. How's he going to look with Cooper Kupp back? Is Stafford? I think Stafford's just – I think the playing behind a woeful offensive line in Detroit has caught up with him. I think he's kind of beat up. But I like Puka. I'm not like – I don't think he's out of range here. But at one pick after Zay Flowers, I don't know. I think I like Flowers better. If Cooper Kupp goes away, I like Puka a lot better because Flowers is just never going to get the volume to be probably a top 18 wide receiver with any consistency. He can be the number 1 in Baltimore. he just isn't going to get the volume to be,
a wide receiver one.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. So what other guys kind of stood out to you here, Dennis? I've kind of highlighted a lot of the ones that were a bit surprising to me. What about you? Are there any guys in here, and they could be higher, they could be lower, whatever, but are there any other ones that kind of stood out to you as like, oh, that guy's going there? I'm a little shocked.
So maybe I'm living in the past, but Mike Evans at wide receiver 42, he looks as awesome this year as he has any year in his career, I think. And maybe Baker's just like, YOLO, he's down there somewhere. But Evans in the 9th round, I get it. He's 30 years old now, or
sure,
getting up there, but 10 straight 1,000-yard seasons, and he doesn't look like he's slowing down. And his game isn't built on separation and speed. So as long as he doesn't get beat up too bad, he's going to be able to play 14, 15 games a year for 2 or 3 more years. So I think in the early 9th round, I think he's a steal at the wide receiver position.
I think that's a good call. I like him quite a bit there too. And that's something that I want to try to do next year, because I only do a startup or 2 every year. I'm looking to do a startup next year. And what I would do during that startup is a odd combination of a productive struggle with everything in the first 5, 6, 7 rounds. Like get tons of draft capital, trade back, get lots of picks in rounds 7 through 10, 11. So then I'll have a bunch of draft capital for 2025, 2026, all the future years. But then what I do is I'll have 3 picks in round 7, 2 picks in round 8, 3 picks in round 9, and I'll draft a win now team in the second half. And I think you could somewhat have your cake and eat it too in that sense, because a lot of these guys go really late, but are still really productive players. So I could draft next year, I could draft DeAndre Swift at pick 66. And then I could go and I could take Chris Godwin at pick 81. And then I'll draft Kirk Cousins at pick 83. And I'll draft Russell Wilson at pick 94. And I'll take, like Amari Cooper at pick 90, and Mike Evans and Keenan Allen, and all of these guys. I'll take Alvin Kamara, like all of these players. And I could probably build a very successful win now team that also has a bunch of draft picks.
Just don't take Darren Waller at 124.
Yeah. Poor guy can't stay healthy.
It's too bad.
Can't stay healthy to save his life. Any other ones that stood out to you before we get to, we talking about a couple of our surprises this year in the NFL season. If we have time to get to that, cool. If not, cool. But any other guys that you wanted to touch on in here that you thought were misranked or surprising to you?
Cortland Sutton at wide receiver 53 was another one.
We talked about him a lot this offseason, Dennis.
He just feels like, I'm definitely team Sutton over Jerry Jeudy. I was scared about Russell Wilson, but Wilson's been playing good. And Sutton that catch he made this weekend and that touchdown, that was brilliant. That was a
fantastic.
phenomenal catch.
Did you see the StatCast stuff on it?
No.
It was the lowest percentage completed touchdown in the StatCast history. Its projected success was like 3.2% or something ridiculous like that.
It was crazy, man. He literally had no more end zone to be in.
No. Yeah, that was an absurd one. I'm with you. We talked about him a lot this offseason as like, hey, he seems like a really good value late in drafts. He's not as old as some of the old guys that are like at this end typically. And when he was healthy, Russell Wilson was targeting him quite a bit. So I actually have a decent amount of Cortland Sutton and have been glad I have, because he's played really well. Now, is he a little bit touchdown dependent? Yeah, unfortunately, he is a little bit touchdown dependent, but he's been catching touchdowns. Whereas
Yeah,
Judy,
I mean, if you can get low end wide receiver 2 production for wide receiver 5 value, I mean,
sign me up all day.
that's crazy.
I'll take wide receiver 4 production at that price. Like,
Right.
it's still a profit, but that much of a profit? Unreal. Absolutely unreal. So I think that's a good one. A little surprised to see Trey McBride this low. I do think Trey McBride is going to be moving up a decent amount. He's currently tight end 16. No one in their right mind is taking Darren Waller over Trey McBride at this point. And even guys like Musgrave and Ferguson and Mayer, like, they look like nice stories, but Trey McBride seems to be the guy there in Arizona. Right. And they're wanting to throw him the ball. So he's currently wide receiver or tight end 16 off the board, 130th player taken overall. So yeah, definitely another one that I think would jump up.
He was the clear tight end 1 in the class last year. And having Ertz there in his way was a little bit of a hiccup, but yeah, he stepped right up and he's raring to go.
Yep, he's looking pretty good. All right, Dennis. Well, let's get away from the ADP now. I think that was a fruitful discussion. Hopefully, people got some good information out of that and kind of seeing how players are being valued at the moment. But Dennis, let's talk about what you've seen this season. Give me something that surprised you. It could be a positive surprise, a negative surprise, but something that's been a surprise to you on how it's played out this season.
So, the biggest surprise I think is Sam Howell. Balling out. When the season started, like, I had high hopes. Howell was my guy in that class. I had him at QB1, and then Bailey freaking Zappi got drafted in front of him. And I'm just like, I don't get it. I thought he literally had Jacoby Myers and I forget who the other wide receiver that he had. But he had like these good NFL caliber wide receivers, and then they went to school, and NFL caliber running backs, they all go to the NFL, and he's still in college, and he had to change his game. He put up an over 800-yard rushing season his next year. Didn't have as good an O-line. He played his butt off, and then he falls all the way to the 5th round, and he's sitting in Washington, and it's like, man, are they just going to give him a shot? And then this year he comes in and he gets a shot and he's putting up some numbers, but man, he's just taken so many sacks. And now you can see, like, he's adjusted his clock for, they're scheming things a little bit different. They're getting him he's getting the ball out quicker. He's not taking as many sacks, and the team is just starting to click, and he's throwing the ball really well. And with McLaurin and Samuel and Dotson, I know Dotson's put up a couple zeros the last few weeks, but they've got some weapons there. And I'm like, Sam Howell is a guy that's putting up numbers.
Yeah, he's looked really good. I hope he isn't a victim of them just making sweeping changes and just kind of getting rid of everybody and starting fresh, because I think he's done enough to deserve a longer audition in the NFL. So I'm definitely with you. On the negative side of things, I feel like I'm about to sneeze.
Bless you. And again.
Ooh, all right. That is great radio right there.
Negativity.
Yeah. It's the negativity was coming out of me. On the negative side of things, Miles Sanders. The expectations were pretty high for him this year. And look, we knew it wasn't a great offense and not a great offensive line, but signed what was a pretty good deal for a free agent running back. Really the only one to get like a legit deal. And I'm not even sure he's the starter anymore. Chuba Hubbard's the one that's been getting a lot of the run and a lot of the work. So for him that quickly to just kind of be the forgotten guy, and I mean, dude is struggling to, even when he was the guy, struggling to put up 30 yards in a game. Like, man, it looked like the usage and everything was there for him to have a really good season, and he has been doo-doo butter. Like, it's been terrible.
Yeah, he was a guy I was on. I have several shares of him. I thought, like, I mean, you follow the money. He got the money.
Yeah.
He got what seemed like security. Did we really think Chuba was a threat?
No.
And he's in the tank. I don't know. Another guy that sticking with the running backs that I'm a little disappointed that is underperformed has been Dameon Pierce.
Yeah.
Now, I felt like Pierce, I know he runs a zone scheme better or a man scheme better than he does the zone scheme.
Mm-hmm.
But after the season he put up last year, I thought he would be serviceable, and he hasn't even shown himself to be serviceable.
Yeah, he's been brutal. And then, of course, Devin Singletary comes out last week and is the AFC Player of the Week for offenses. So, yeah, definitely not the direction you were hoping things were going to go for a guy like him. The next one that I'm going to take is a disappointment, and people still seem to be pretty high on him in the ADP that we just talked about. He's wide receiver 21 still, which is way higher than I would take him. Christian Watson, he's another one of those guys, kind of like a Kadarius Toney. It seems like where he just can't seem to stay on the field, just can't seem to stay healthy. When he's out there, he hasn't really done much, and it just kind of looks like it was a fun streak with Aaron Rodgers, and then it was over, and that's all it was. It was just a shooting star that burned up and is gone now.
Yeah, I'm going to take Dontavian Wicks plus over Christian Watson every time. I mean,
Yeah.
Wicks has looked good with Watson out. He stepped up and made some plays. He doesn't have the overall complete speed, but he has that big body.
Yeah.
And that's a young team, lots of young receivers. And it'll be interesting to see how it shakes out. But I agree with you. Watson has been significantly disappointing.
For sure. Well, that about wraps things up for us tonight. Awesome to be back once again. Sorry about last week, everyone, but it was good to be back here. Good to be back with you, Dennis. Dennis, remind everyone where they can find you and anything else you want to preach to the choir.
You can find me on the X Machine at culture_coach. I am on the Fantasy Football Roundtable podcast, and then behind the scenes over at Nerds doing some editing. We dropped our first mock draft of the season for the 2024 rookie class this past week. So hop on there and take a look and see how that first round.
Dennis, we might have to talk about that next week. That could be interesting content right there. All right. Well, for Dennis Bennett, once again, thank you to Tyler for joining us at the beginning of the show. Thank you guys for tuning in. Appreciate it. We will be back next week with more Dynasty Nerds content. You can find me on Twitter at Dynasty Price, and we will see you next week.